Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey, what's up, all? It's Scott Groves here with my longtime friend, Mike McCarthy, who he's like the Caucasian most interesting man in the world. He and his father started and kind of grew the KW, I would say, market area in like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware. He's an investor in North Florida, Keller Williams operations. So I think somewhere around 11,000 realtors in America report up to Mike McCarthy and his partners at some level, responsible for like $25 billion in sales. Obviously, that's created some freedom, which allowed Mike to be one of the, I think, co-founders of GoBundance, which is a men's group. He and his wife wrote a book in the Miracle Morning series. He's like a prolific traveler, great father, from what I can tell, your interactions with your kids. We're in Front Row Dads together. It's just, it's kind of nuts that all the stuff that Mike finds time to squeeze into his busy life. And we've just had a lot of great conversations. Like, I got to have you on the podcast to talk about how in the hell do you manage it all? Do you have your fingers in all these different kind of businesses and ventures? And yes, welcome to the podcast, Caucasian most interesting man in the world.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Where does life find you these days? Because I know sometimes you're living in Colorado. You've lived in Philadelphia a lot of your life, and where are you at now?
Pretty much home base most of the time now is Austin. Our kids are in schools that they love here, and they don't like to miss school. They're on different schedules, so their breaks don't line up. So we spend quite a bit of time in Texas here in Austin, where we moved right before the pandemic. So good timing on our part. I wish I would have bought 10 more houses when I moved here.
Yeah, of course, right? Hindsight's 2020. I remember the first time I went to Austin about 5 years ago. My wife and I looked at a couple houses in like Lakeview neighborhood, or further north in like Round Rock or Red Rock or whatever it's called. And, we'd be up about 100% in value now if we would have bought 5 years ago. So it is what it is. But tell us a little bit about growing a giant real estate empire with your dad. And kind of, I know at some point you took over and just poured lighter fluid on it. And what is your involvement in Keller Williams at this point? Like, are you doing day-to-day real estate stuff, or are you just a silent investor? I'm really fascinated in like, what's the business model of having a kind of empire that large?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, like, you can't do anything big without a strong team. So, for every project and every venture that I take on, even down to my investing, I have people that are my partners or who are my employees that handle these, operations, the details. I'm more of the visionary type. I keep my hand in everything, but it's more to pat people on the back and to help them to shine and to help them solve the larger, bigger problems. And also to ensure that, working in my world leads to wealth building. That's something that I take seriously. And it's not just the building of tangible assets, but also the intangible assets and legacy that someone might leave behind. So I'm a big proponent of families and, putting family first and leading at home the same way you might at work, because, children are our future. So, I tend to look at business as a vehicle to create opportunity for other people. And when I do that correctly, it frees me up to go do something else as a visionary. And so, that's how I keep everything moving, is I find great partners and great people, and then I give them great opportunities. And then I'm extraordinarily grateful for those individuals. And I'm generous with them. I treat them with respect, and people want to work with me because they know that there's great opportunity to learn and also to earn. So it's a great situation. And building Keller Williams from when I started to where it is today is a magical experience. Like, you couldn't pay for that education anywhere. To join my father as his assistant and slowly learn that the size of this opportunity that he had seized, and also realize the pressures that went along with it, because we had to sell a certain number of franchises every single year, or they take the region back from you because you have to meet development schedules. So, I came in pretty green and learned a lot from my dad really quick. Probably thought I knew more than I actually did and tried to take over faster than I probably should have. But at the same time, my dad was very gracious. He's semi-retired pretty early, lives an amazing life and is proud of me for what I dove in and did. He had to sit on the sidelines and try to guide me, and I'm kind of thick-headed, so it wasn't an easy job on his part, but it gave me that freedom to make my own mistakes, become my own man, and eventually take over our family legacy, which is a great honor. And I feel a great responsibility to pay that forward, not only to my own family, but to anybody who might be an entrepreneur. So I'm passionate about that space and working with entrepreneurs and building wealth, in our families and in our lives and even in our health.
So I'm going to push back a little bit for the viewer that might be rolling their eyes a little bit, right? Because I know some people that would say, oh yeah, it's super easy to put family first and become self-actualized and whatnot after you've made it and the money's coming in and or you're rich, whatever that means in modern America. But I remember a time, and I've seen the pictures shortly before we met, where you were about 50 pounds heavier. You've mentioned in talks that you've given publicly that you were not happy, that you were micromanaging, that you weren't putting family first. Can you talk a little bit about that transition where it was like at some point, hey, I've got to give up some revenue or I've got to give up some control. I've got to invest in other people to bring in great leaders, because I met you right after you had made that transition where you're like, hey, if I got to give up money to bring in other good people because I can't do it all and I have to focus on my family and my health. I remember there was a time when we first met through Hal where it was like, I don't know if I made the right decision. Like I just gave up a whole lot of my net worth, my income to like pursue this better health, better family. And I know the punchline that actually led to more wealth and more opportunity. But can you talk about that scary moment when like you were trying to do everything yourself, you were trying to keep all the money internally in the family, you weren't investing in other people, your health was shit, you made that transition consciously. And, now being on the other side of it, people look at it and be like, oh, well, that was so easy. He was just born rich, da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, he had to make some real fucking tough decisions. So can you go back to that mindset maybe 7 or 10 years ago and kind of speak to that?
Yeah, what a great question. And it's fun to just explore that myself and think back to those times. But, for me, it was, an opportunity for me to learn that, two sides of the same coin and to understand that, there's two different ways to approach anything. And one is to go all in and hustle and grind and like make it happen. And I did that for many years and it works. What I found is that it didn't really lead me to success and fulfillment. It led me to success, but it was missing the fulfillment part of it. And so what happened was, out of obligation and necessity and maybe even desperation, I had to start seeking the answer to the question, which was, if I've become so successful and I've achieved all these goals, why am I still so unhappy? And that was when I was doing everything myself. And I had to realize and wake up to the fact that, my businesses were part of my vision and they were part of something that I built, but they weren't me. There was more to me than just my titles or my businesses or my accolades or trophies that I might have won. And so I had to realize that if I wanted to become the best version of me, the truest version of me, I needed to let go of all of those other versions of Mike and just become who I am truly meant to be. And that person was someone who needed to focus more on their health, focus more on their family, needed to do the miracle morning more, needed to lead other groups and, contribute to nonprofits like One Life or Project Roar. And when I started doing those things, yes, I had to hire more people and I had to give up a little bit of what my ego might call like significance, because when you step out of a role, it's not often that you can't afford it or you can't find the right person. It's that you don't believe somebody can do a better job than you. You don't believe that if you put someone in that position that they will do a better job. In fact, part of you wants to believe they won't. And so you self-sabotage when you hire into those roles where you truly give up control. So I had to really align with people that I wanted to see them win. Like if they grew so big and did so well that they bought me out and I lost all of my opportunity within the company because they were that good, that would be a good thing. And I would have given them a pathway to greatness and to success the same way my father gave me a pathway. So I feel that duty and that honor to realize no matter what the role is, there's someone out there that can do it better than me. And if I just get out of my own way, I'll probably have more time to do what I love, and I'll probably end up making more money while I create an opportunity for another person. How beautiful is that cycle, doing it that way versus I'm the technician, only I can sell houses, only I can list houses. You right. Find this in real estate all the time. No one would ever list their house with someone if I sent my teammate instead of me. They got to deal with me. Like that's bullshit. Like I've seen that disproven hundreds and thousands of times.
Yeah, you and I have a mutual friend, Josh Painter, where like he doesn't even go on listing appointments anymore because he found like a younger, better looking, better talking version of himself. And he's like, dude, why would I ever take a listing appointment when I can send Garrett, who's better looking, better spoken, like he's listed more houses now at this point in his career, and I'll just take an override on him and give him an opportunity. So it's like Josh gets to sit at home and play drums and have a great living and be a great leader, and Garrett's so busy, he just bought like his second house in a Lambo, and it's just, most people never let their ego get out of the way to let whether it's a younger person, a better person, whatever, come in and kind of take their fire. That's not easy as a man.
Yeah, and it's not easy at all. And then people start saying, like, clients probably say shit to Josh like, man, Garrett is so awesome. He's doing such a great job. Everything has improved ever since he took over. Like, he's right. The man. And you're sitting there like, this is awesome. And it's heart-wrenching all at the same time. Because, even with GoBundance, I experienced that. Like, as the next guy would take over, it's like, man, things have improved around here. We're really picking up. Like, who was that last dipshit that was the CEO? Like, he did a bad job. It's like, you just have to be able to grow out of that. If you want your life to be big, you can't be boxed into one version of yourself like that. So I think it's a symptom of that, wanting to live a big life.
I love it, man. And I've got a question about that success versus fulfillment, because I haven't heard somebody yet phrase it like that. Like, we see it all the time in the mortgage industry. It's like, and I won't use anybody's name, but let's just say some of the top producers in the industry. It's like, awesome. You look at their numbers, they're doing XYZ number, but they're also morbidly obese. And I happen to know behind the scenes, they're recently divorced and had to, stroke a check for $10 million to their ex-spouse because they made no time for them. And, they're probably going to spend a large portion of their net worth on counseling for their kids. I'm kind of projecting here, obviously, but it's scary. Like, you can have all the business success in the world, but there's really no fulfillment. And maybe you're even going backwards. And I feel like in the movies or in real life, there's got to be that moment, Miracle on 34th Street or something like that, where it's like, there's that moment you almost get hit by a bus, you have a heart attack, your spouse threatens to leave you. Was there a moment in time where you're like, oh man, I got to shift priorities? Like, did you see a picture of yourself and you're like, oh man, I've gained a few LBs? Or was there a moment that hit you like a ton of bricks? Or was it kind of just like an evolution over your career where it's like, hey, it's time to hand off this, it's time to focus a little bit more on here? Or was that like aha moment, oh, birth of the second kid, I've got to get my shit together?
Yeah, actually it was there was like this 30-day period where I just didn't want to get out of bed. For whatever reason, I just stayed in bed and I just sort of sulked and was like, what's the point? Like, no one would know if I showed up today or not. Like, I was just sort of like had a lost period of time. And what's amazing is right before that, I got all geared up at this event, and I asked this coach, Janai Lane, like, hey, will you work with me? And I thought I was being all bold and I was going to pay the money. And I thought she'd be like, oh yeah, I'd love to work with you. And she was like, I have a waiting list right now. Like, sorry, you can't work with me yet. And I was like, oh my God. So I just came back from that retreat and just laid in bed depressed for, 4 weeks. And then she called me and said, oh, I have an opening. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll get started. And then she started bringing me to a lot of like what I would say basic tools now, but for anyone listening that hasn't done the work, the inner work, just writing in a gratitude journal, just meditating, a guided meditation for 5 minutes a day. And, it slowly brought me back to things that were part of who I am. Like being in shape is something I value as an identity. So I started losing weight and running again. Running is something I used to do a lot of. So a little change in what you do, a little small change in a daily habit, it can snowball into bigger and more profound changes over time. So, I just started chipping away at it, and I'm not perfect by any means. I have a lot of chipping away left to do. And I have 3 coaches to this day. I still work with Janai Lane after 16 plus years. And I work with Dr. Kelly with my wife. We do an every other week call, just coaching to make sure we're the best couple we can be. And then I also have a trauma coach that I work with that helps me work on, working with my inner child and really working on some deeper type stuff too. And then I have a health coach. So the learning never stops. I don't say that to brag. Like I say it to show everyone that there isn't this arrival point where you become successful. It's you go get the help and the coaching and you do the work. So you just keep doing that work and your life grows and gets bigger and bigger.
I guess I have a bit of a negative or scarcity mindset because I can always think about where people are rolling their eyes, right? It's like, oh, well, great. Yeah, Mike can afford to have 4 coaches. It's like, well, yeah, but you can probably get 90% of the value of those coaches on YouTube for free. So, I was
reading their books. Yeah,
exactly. I was talking to my son. I have a 20-year-old. I was talking to him the other day, and I was so proud of him because he had to do something for a class, like some horrible art history class that he has to take that he has no interest in whatsoever. But it's like a requirement of his college curriculum. And he's like, I've got to do this canvas thing. Can you Venmo me a couple bucks for a canvas? I'm like, yeah, what are you going to do on a canvas? He's like, oh, I don't know. I just YouTubed like, what's the fanciest post-modern, cheapest, easiest way to do art? And it was like adult finger painting. So he made this, which, I'm not saying this just because he's my son, this pretty cool, like finger painting handprint thing. And I was like, oh yeah, there's basically nothing you can't learn on YouTube if you're not motivated. So I just wanted to point that out to anybody that's like, well, I can't afford 4 coaches. It's like, yeah, but you can afford to go on YouTube for half an hour and learn something about yourself.
Yeah, and you know what? Mentors are free usually. And what's surprising about mentors is most mentors are willing to give you mentorship if you just ask, like for free. They'll help you. They'll have lunch with you. They'll have coffee with you. What's funny is it's like the hot chick that no one wants to ask to prom, right? Because they think they're going to get shot down. So nobody asks the person to mentor them. And then if they do get up the courage to do it, they make a fatal mistake, which is they ask the mentor for advice and then they talk the whole time. They don't listen. They just spew all over them. And then if the mentor does give them any kind of advice, they don't go implement it. So it's like people have to show up graciously, and you'd be surprised what type of coaching or guidance, mentorship you could get for free just by being somebody who's like eager to learn, curious, gracious. Maybe you find a way to contribute into that person's life, but there's always a way in the door. And like my friend Diego Corzo says, like, if you can't find a way in the door, then you go around back and see if you can find your way in the window. Like, there's
Right.
always a way in, no matter what. So
Totally. In the mortgage industry, there's an interesting corollary. The thing that all loan officers think that their company is hiding, or the monsters under the bed, is like our secondary department, right? The department that actually sets rates and sells the loans on the open market. And it's like this crazy black box to loan officers that we don't really understand. So I reached out to the head of our secondary department. I was like, hey man, like, I just want to understand this at a deeper level. Could I just come sit next to you for like 3 days and you teach me how you're selling the loans and pricing the book of the business and what a bid versus sell spread is? And mind you, this is like a very large company of a couple thousand loan officers. And he's like, Scott, you would be interested in what I do for a living? And I was like, yeah, like every loan officer says they want to learn it. And it's like kind of creepy because like we don't know how these rates are devised. And he's like, I would love for a loan officer to come sit with me who I could teach. I've never had a loan officer ask me that in my entire career. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's this whole component of the mortgage space I could learn for free just by going and sitting next to this dude who's world class at his job for 3 days. And I felt so stupid for not having asked previously. But to your point, now I got to get out there and just ask good questions and listen.
yeah, and it's because he's passionate about it, and people want people to be interested in things that they're passionate about, where there's a talent. So it's an opportunity to let somebody put on display what they do well. And it's so beautiful because if all humans helped other humans learn what they needed to learn, like, we wouldn't have to have coaches or schools, or we could teach the community. That's a big grand philosophy that we're very far from as a society. But I think there's something to the fact that we all know something and we all have something to contribute or to teach, and we can lean on each other if we're willing to ask for the help. So
I love that. I want to pivot a little bit because you just have so much, you're such a wealth of knowledge in business. Feel free to share or don't share, but anything that's out there in the public space that people know you're involved with or an owner of, or you've got your fingers in, give us the rundown of the businesses that you either participate in as an owner, an investor, a leader on the board of directors. What are all the things that you're involved with? Obviously, we have a very large KW presence, but maybe speak a little bit more to that, and then all of the other businesses you got your fingers in.
yeah, awesome. Well, like you mentioned earlier, also a co-founder of GoBundance, which is a men's and women's organization, actually. So we've got about 100 women members and about 600 men who are members. And that's just exploded the last couple of years. And it's an adventure-based mastermind group where we bring in speakers and we facilitate guys and gals connecting with each other to help exchange value and to share knowledge and to hold the space of authenticity, where it's okay to need to grow still, even though you might be successful in your career or in your work or in some area. Everybody struggles in some area. So GoBundance is about coming together so that we can help each other to be the best husbands, fathers, mothers, wives, and business people that we can possibly be. And that was started as a passion project, but very quickly turned into a monster organization that is led by Chris Ryan now. And then I've got 3 other partners. And we started a book called The Tribe of Millionaires that people can check out at tribeofmillionaires.com. You can pick up a free copy. Excuse me. And I think Tribe of Millionaires is a great introductory to the power of getting around the right people. So whether it's Front Row Dads or Quantum Leap Mastermind, which you've been a part of, Scott, with me, or the exchange community, just being a part of a community where you get around people is something I'm passionate about. So I do quite a bit of facilitation when it comes to families. I've run many family events for GoBundance for a division that we created called FamBundance. And that's not really its own business. It's more of just an organization. And then, I own some interesting things like a small piece of a company called Growler Works. They make growlers that keep your beer fresh for over a month in your refrigerator. So if you don't want to drink the whole growler, it's under CO2 pressure and it pours out kind of like a keg. And they actually, are doing about 15 million in sales a year of these things. So they're doing quite well. So we owned a brewery, but ended up selling it. It just wasn't in the right location. And then beyond that, like I just invest a lot with solid operators. Like I find people that, you know, I can use my balance sheet and my money and an investment to help bankroll somebody who can put the sweat equity in. They find the deal and then they usually renovate and then we re-rent and then refinance and then I'll get my money back and then we'll continue as partners. And so I look for a lot of deals to deploy that are, cash flow deals. Either I get my money back and we hold forever, or we hold it for a long time and just get a great cash flow and then get our money back. So multifamily, self-storage, we do a lot of funds or in that nature. I've dabbled in crypto just a little bit, but I really like cash flow things and I like things that are service oriented. I did start a nonprofit this last year to help people that have limb differences to do outdoor activities. It's called ROAR, Reimagined Outdoor Adaptive Recreation. And we've built 2 snowboards for athletes so far that do not have legs. And so we have our own prototype of this thing. And I love snowboarding and I love surfing. And it's fun to get people out there doing something that they never thought never dreamed that they could do. So we just started that recently. So so there's a team for every single one of those things. So it sounds like a lot, but I serve more as a board of director or a key executive in most of those. And, my job is the vision of a lot of these things, and the teams that surround me are much smarter than me. They're really capable, and there's a lot of love and loyalty. They're like my extended family. So
I've got a question about that. Hiring the right team members. Obviously, you have a group of people, many groups of people running the KW business, and you and the 3 founders at GoBundance, which I'm kind of intimately familiar with. You now have some executive assistants, and you brought on a real full-time big boy CEO of the organization. How many people do you say are either reporting directly to you or give you business updates on a weekly or monthly basis? Like, is your week just filled with kind of back-to-back meetings as the CEO, the visionary, the board of directors saying, hey, let's go over the key metrics, the KPIs, and I want to cast my vision? Or is there still some business operations where you're rolling up your sleeves and doing some of the day-to-day?
I usually have about anywhere from 5 to 10 calls leading those various teams every week. And some of them are just standing team calls that we do. Some of them are one-on-one from direct reports. There's about 4 people that are my direct reports right now. And then everyone else really reports to those 4. In a perfect world, I would continue to scale that up to where, it's 1 or 2 direct reports. But I like being involved and I love the people I work with. So it's great. There's very little that they need me to do. Like I'll come in and I'll share an hour with a group of agents or leaders about wealth building, or I'm gonna go and deliver a keynote about the Miracle Morning for Parents and Families playbook, so families can structure their values together and set their goals together and create a family meeting that keeps them all on the same page. And then I will make connections so that they can bring in influencers like Justin Donald is going to come do a mastermind for us. And so, they tap my network and then they tap, me for things to do that add value. And then if there's something that I need to address, like the purchase of a market center or, getting involved with a dispute between some market centers, like if I need to, I'll get involved. But my main executive, John Clyde, was formerly a sergeant with the state troopers, and he's he's got lots of skills negotiating politics and, sticky situations. And so he's solid. And then his backup is Paula and Michelle, two other executives, and they know the details in the book inside and out. So when it comes to paperwork and knowing our stuff and having our numbers together, like on the real estate side, we're dialed in. And the guy who runs my investment world is another GoBundance guy who was a nuclear engineer, and he wanted to leave his W-2, and he came to work for me just this last year, and he's in charge of basically being the chief of staff for me. So he's starting to be more of a right hand and fill in where he's needed. And he talks to all of the different investments to check in and see how they're doing, reviews their operating agreements, like just does all of the detail, like integrator type stuff that I'm not really capable of doing. So still building that team out. Eventually it'll be a family office. That's the end goal, is to have a family office.
That's awesome. We're ironically, for the first time in a long time, we're well ahead of schedule on recording podcasts. So this might not come out till, late summer of 2022, but we're filming this in May of 2022. Ironically, you mentioned crypto as that's completely melting down and shitting the bed. We've got kind of record high inflation. Everything feels a little frothy, right? It's like you can look at oil prices or gold prices or real estate prices or the stock market, and everything feels kind of frothy and kind of expensive and kind of at the top of the range. But with inflation, we can't just let money sit in the bank because it's losing 10% of its value every year. So money has to be deployed somewhere. I'd love to hear from you. Like, where do you think money should be invested, or how are you conceptualizing in 2022 where you can still invest money for a return where there's not a huge risk with everything just feeling so expensive?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. I mean, every year there's a couple oil and gas investments that I do that are very tax favorable. And, you're able to roll over your income from those and get more of a tax write-off. And I just put a very small amount in those every single year. I put money in a similar ATM fund. So it's a guy that puts together a fund. They go out and they buy locations for ATMs. They get a new machine, and you get 100% depreciation in year one. And then you get a set payout until you get your capital back. Plus, I think it's like 20%. And then you adjust that for depreciation and your tax benefit, and it becomes a really solid deal. I like those kind of structured deals like that. I'm invested in a lot of multifamily syndications and self-storage syndications. And, I like those because I think, people are going to need to live somewhere. There's a shortage of places to live in general. If interest rates keep going up and people don't want to buy, they're going to want to rent. So I'm a big believer that multifamily, even though it's very, very hot and frothy, as you put it, I still think multifamily is going to grow, and still rents will still go up. And I think, property values will go up. I also, put my money in places like, I have some life insurance policies that, are structured specifically for me, where I can put the money, and if I need it later, I can borrow it. And, at the end, there's a death benefit that'll help with estate taxes and other things at the end. So that's another safe place, I believe, to put it. I don't put any money in the stock market. Even my IRA and stuff is invested in like private equity companies that go in and turn things around, like a KKR or something like that. And, I also am always looking for, like I said, the small operator to buy something smaller, and find deals that are, fourplexes or eightplexes. Like I put an offer in on a fourplex with a buddy the other day in Austin for 300. We'll see if we get it, but if we get it, then he'll do all the work and we'll split the equity. But I don't know if there's a lot of safe places to put cash. I wouldn't put it in Bitcoin because it's so volatile. I wouldn't put it in the stock market. I think right now, I'd almost rather just have cash. And even though there's some inflation, 10% or whatever, if it does crash, I'd like to be ready and have that money. So whatever you do, make sure you have enough of it liquid or close enough to liquid so that you can be ready when the frenzy is upon us. Because if something does crash, then we're going to be sitting in a place where we'll wish we had bought a bunch of stuff like in 2008 and 2009 when, I didn't know and I didn't have the money to do what I would do now, given if the roles were reversed. But with inflation, it's hard to peg, right? And you know so much about this. I learn a lot from the content that you put out too. But, when it comes to inflation, it's like, well, will the prices of houses ever come down? Because if inflation is going to keep going and going and going, like, is there an end to it? It's not like 2008 where
Right.
there's clearly mismanaged funds and there's going to be a bubble that pops. This time, the mismanaged fund is they printed so much money that everything is becoming worth more and more and more, and the dollar is being devalued, which, that's about all I really understand and know about it. But for me, it forces me to want to hold a lot of cash. So right now I have a number, and it's like our whole team meeting and everything we talk about is getting to this like rainy day fund, like getting enough set aside. And then we'll decide if there are some safer places to keep it that we can still access it and maybe have it earn 1 or 2% interest.
Yeah, I love it, man. I remember in 2008, same thing. My money is directly, or my income previously, and still directly correlated to the health of the market, right? Because I still do mortgages, I still coach mortgage loan officers. So it's like when I have a lot of disposable income, it is when houses are expensive and everybody's doing loans and people are buying houses. And I remember in 2008, 2009, going to wealthier friends of mine because I was wiped out and effectively dead broke. I remember going to wealthier friends of mine and be like, please, please, please buy this fourplex in Atwater Village for $330,000, which now would resell for like $1.9 million. And, it's hard when there's blood in the streets to pull the trigger. So that discipline of like having the dry powder, saving the cash, having the liquid assets. But when things are down 40%, it's like, well, is that the time to deploy the cash? Because maybe it'll go down 60%. And when it's down 60%, it's like, well, there's blood in the streets and it seems like a lot of people are losing their house. Could housing go down 80%? And it's so hard to time that market. And I know you're not an emotional guy when it comes to investing, so I believe that you will do it. I just don't know if I would have the heart to do it. Like, just as I'm seeing things sink, be like, yes, into the market, into the breach rerun. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be mentally prepared for that. So you'll have to text me at some point in the future and be like, all right, Scott, it's time to deploy cash. Just trust me. Don't be emotional.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be hard to time, right? I'll more likely catch it as it starts to go up and be a little bit late because, like you said, it's hard to peg. And, I think I learned enough last go around to just make sure I have a bunch of cash saved up. And then, as the saying goes, you don't wait to buy real estate, you buy real estate and wait. So I think if you look at it as a long-term investment, like, that's definitely for me, my outlook is that that's the safest place for us to really, it doesn't leave it as liquid, but I don't see there being a huge bubble that pops and we see a 40% drop in housing values. We might see a 10 to 15% drop if there's a market correction, but I don't think it'll be more than that. And I think it'll recover in 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
So I still like the if you can find real estate, especially wholesale or pocket listings or before it hits the market. I mean, look at the deal. And if you're somebody, by the way, you mentioned a few times, like, yeah, that's easy for you. You've got the money to pay cash or whatever, but you will find the money. If you find the deal and it's a good deal, finding the money is easy right now. So,
Right.
for everyone wanting to get in the game, if you're just waiting until you have the money to do it, like, you're just wasting time. Like, get good at analyzing deals, get good at finding them, then go bring them to experienced people, have them verify what you're seeing. And if it's a good deal, they'll partner with you and give you sweat equity. I will.
Well, we've got a buddy. We got a buddy, Mike Higgins, out in Wisconsin. He's a realtor, part of Front Row Dads with us. He posted on Instagram, kind of what we're talking about, right? Like there in every market, there's deals to be found. We found this house that's probably worth 185 current condition, probably worth 250 fully renovated. The owner's kids are just done with it. It's a shithole. He's like, we locked it up for, I think, $98,000 or $100,000. So 100% rate of return. I know, because I talked to him, he's like, I don't have 150 grand on this project to just buy it and renovate it and flip it. He put it on Instagram in one post. I called him. He's like, oh yeah, that was fully funded in like 7 minutes. And he had to be really careful because you can't really solicit deals on Instagram. So he didn't talk about interest rates or rate of returns. He just simply said, here's the math of an opportunity that's out there. And by the time I called him like 5 hours later, he's like, oh yeah, I already had a bunch of people put up the money. We're good to go. So the money can be found if you're willing to hustle and find the deal.
You got to go quick. You got to move fast in today's market. You got to try to lock it up, and don't get in the bidding war situations if you can avoid it. Try to get it before it hits the market. Door knock, whatever you've got to do. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I just hope our country can keep its shit together, honestly. And I hope that people have really woke up, like in the good sense of the term. Like, I hope people are really understanding that there's a middle ground. Like, we can't get too extreme on either side. That's what I love about your approach to politics, Scott, is that, I don't really know which side you more lean towards, because you're such a good, vetter of both sets of information, and you take what you learn from one side and what you learn from the other, and you form your own opinion, which is the way it's supposed to be. But so many of us now find ourselves on one side or the other of an issue, and we can't seem to find this common ground that is the core of having a healthy society. So I hope that we can just move through this together, whatever's coming, crashes, bubbles, whatever. I just hope we're able to find a way to move through it as a society and do it, collectively. And a lot of that has to do with how we raise our children, right? I know that this is important to you. We do Front Row Dads together, and, it's our duty to really show up as the fathers and the family members that our children really need, and spend the time with them that they deserve, and make sure that we instill in them all of the values and strengths and learnings that they're never going to get at school. They're not going to get it even maybe at the Boy Scouts or in doing their extracurricular activities. They're going to learn what you do, watch you, and see how you lead in the home, and hopefully someday get to see you lead your business and how you do things in the business world. And I think if our kids can learn both of those things, then we have a chance really at healing, society, and finding more unity instead of more differences, because we seem to be hooked on all the things we disagree on instead of how similar our life experiences really are, when you boil it all down.
Totally. And especially social media, right? It's like enragement gets engagement. So you put up some thoughtful post and 3 people will interact, but you say something really controversial and you get 500 reactions. This kind of goes the direction I wanted to close up here. And I know your time is valuable. We got a few more minutes. I know you as somebody who has done the work, right? Like you said, you're meeting with Dr. Flanagan. We'll make sure we have a link to him in the show notes. He's another fellow Front Row Dad. We'll make sure we have a link to Front Row Dads as well. But you're somebody that I know who's consistently putting in the work of, hey, I've got a business to run. I've got team members I'm responsible to, but at the core, I've got to be a great father and a great husband. Share with us, like, what's the best thing you're doing right now as a dad, and what's the best thing you're doing right now as a husband? Like the coaching, the mastermind, the counseling with Dr. Flanagan, the stuff that you've been exposed to, like what's really set into your heart as like, this is the thing that I'm doing really well right now as a father, and this is the thing I'm doing really well right now as a husband?
Yeah, great question. as a father, what I think I'm doing a great job of right now is, especially as my son embarks in the teenage years, he's 13. I don't know if you remember those years, but for me, those were challenging years. You're developing, you have hormones, you've got relationships and cliques and bullies, and you also have schoolwork on top of it all, and a lot's expected of you. And so, with my son, what I've been trying to really have him understand is that even if he's not doing what I want him to be doing or what I think he should be doing, is I'm trying to let him know that I have his back no matter what, even if he makes mistakes or does something he shouldn't do. And I said, even if you lied to me, made a bunch of mistakes, found yourself somewhere where you weren't safe, where you didn't know your way out, that's when you call me. That's when you pick up the phone and you say, Dad, I need your help. And if you do that, then I'm not going to punish you or be mad at you for all the dumb mistakes and things that you did leading up to you being in that position. So I want you to know I have your back no matter what. No questions asked. I'll pick you up from anywhere, anytime, for any reason. I have your back. That's all I care about. And I want you to know that. And I wanted him to start understanding this now, because as he gets older, we know kids do stupid shit, and they usually lie before they do stupid shit. So then when they do this stupid shit, they can't tell anyone that they did some stupid shit, or they can't find a safe way out of it. And, at least this is what my friends told me happens, because I was an angel, obviously.
Of course. Yeah, I did nothing wrong either.
But anyways, I'm trying to just make sure that as he goes through his teenage years, he knows that I'm not a source of judgment, or my job as a parent, yes, is to guide him and tell him what to do. But my main role is that I have his back, and that he knows no matter what, I have his back. And so that's where I'm focused at as a parent right now, very keenly, because we're going through a lot as a family. He broke his leg recently. He had an incident earlier this year where he got kicked out of a snowboarding school that he was at for 8 weeks, or he got sent home early. So he's just in his teenage, years, and that's what I'm really, really working on with him. And then I'll share, if you have any comments on that, feel free, and then I can share with you what my wife and I are doing too.
Yeah, it's funny because I was a wreck of a teenager. For context, my senior year of high school, my mom had to go beg the school board to let me graduate, because even though I had straight A's, they had this weird obscure rule where if you had more than 50 absences, you couldn't graduate. And in 200 days of public school, or 180 days of public school, I had 57 absences, because I was surfing, I was chasing girls, I was ditching, I was luckily I didn't fall into drugs, but all of the other debauchery you can do as a teenager, that was me. And, we've talked about this, I have a challenging relationship with my father as an adult, but as a teenager, he couldn't have done a better job. There was no front row dads for my dad. There was no, going to Tony Robbins. He was just a hard working motherfucker when I was a kid. And I will never forget, there were several times where he grabbed me by the head and he's like, look, your curfew is 11 p.m. You better be home by 11 p.m. However, I also know that nothing good with a teenager happens after 11 p.m. in a car. So if you're stuck somewhere, you won't be in trouble. There won't be any consequences. Call me at 11:59, find a phone, and just be like, hey, I'm drunk. I'm here. I'm going to bed down for the night. And I'm not going to try to rush home to beat this curfew. He's like, because that's how teenagers end up dead. And I remember we had a lot of conversations like that where, his primary goal was keeping me safe as a father and having my back. And that shit really matters to me, as an adult. So, before I start crying, go off about what you're doing best with your wife.
Yeah, no, that's awesome though, man. Your dad did a great job with that. And that's beautiful. It seems to have worked out. You're an okay guy. So.
Yeah, I have my moments.
Yeah. The thing with my wife is that we're really learning how to complement each other and just know that we have shared strengths and that we're different. We're different people, and each of us has different perspectives and different ways of approaching things. And I think we're really finding a way to value and respect who the other person is and allow them to be who they are. And that has taken a lot of work because if you're not aware of it, a lot of the cycles that played out when you were a child or whatever your childhood trauma might be or whatever it is where you feel not worthy, if we're not careful, we'll generally try to play those out with our significant other. Like in some way we'll project that on them, or we'll see that in them, and it reminds us unconsciously of that. So we're both on a journey to really heal our trauma, and then we continually grow together. And then we what we're doing right now really well, I think, is just a lot of shared strengths and a lot of alignment. We took the Enneagram, if you've never taken that, ENNEAGRAM, I think, Enneagram, and that really helps you to understand people, teams, family members, whoever it might be, and just it helps you to understand that people are different, and we all come from this sort of sense of needing to protect ourselves. And if we can break down those barriers, especially with the people we're most intimate with, then there's a lot of growth that can be had. And it's beautiful to find, like my wife and I are lucky because we're both on this journey. A lot of people, it's one spouse or the other, or neither. And I think that can be very challenging as well. But luckily, we're both sort of have always been goal setters and competitive. And she played Division I field hockey when she was in college. So she's athletic, and we just kind of have that. We do things at level 11 in our family, not 9, not 8. We do level 11. So
I love that about you, man. It's like you really embody the Go Abundance spirit of like, one life worth living, get after it, go big. Like it's just one of the things I really appreciate about you, while also being understated and humble. Like most people that are trying to grab life big and do the things and do the snowboarding camps with their kids, they're also really boisterous and, in my opinion, douchey about it. And you've just found this really nice, like even keel of like, man, we're going big and we're going to be humble about it and like just have a good time and be good people. And I just really respect that about you, which is why I want to catch up over a conversation. I've got 2 closing questions, and I'll prep you for the first one so your subconscious can be working on it. You watch the news, you watch social media, everything's negative, everything's falling apart. We're just coming out of the COVID drama. Now we're about to go into election season drama. So I'd love to hear one of the things in 2022 that you're most looking forward to, or the thing you're most looking forward to. But before we get to that question, I always like to close with favorite movie, because I feel like you can learn so much about somebody. I'm a big movie junkie. What's your favorite movie all time and why?
It's too easy. Point Break.
Yes!
And
I tried to name my son Bodie, and my wife wouldn't let me.
I named my dog Bodie, so I got away with that. But yeah, I mean, I just love the action. I love the sort of like the way that you love the bad guys. You root for them, but you're sort of torn. And Patrick Swayze is just like the ultimate surf god guru. And then Johnny Utah, Keanu Reeves's character is just, young, dumb, and as they say in the movie, I won't say
full of cum,
but yeah, he's every bit of that, and eager to make his bust. And I just think it's a kick-ass story, and I love it, man. I love every part of that movie. I've probably seen it like 40 times, man.
And it's Gary Busey's best role ever as like kind of the washed up cop, like the Obi-Wan Kenobi type guy. It's like, it's so funny because it's, in my mind, Point Break is like a modern day Star Wars. Like you've got the young, dumb, Luke Skywalker. You've got Gary Busey as Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like you kind of want to even root for Darth Vader because he's so cool and he's probably the coolest character in the movie, but he is really a bad guy. It's just like, it's one of my favorite movies as well.
Utah, get me two.
Get me two. All right. So best movie. I'm super glad I asked that question. And thing you're looking forward to most, like, coming to the middle end of 2022, like what's on your radar, whether it's an event, whether it's just more time with the family, like what are you most looking forward to in 2022?
It's definitely more time with the family. So, the older I get, the more I realize like my time with my parents and Lindsay's parents is limited. And so we're going to spend a lot of time with family this year. We'll probably get some camper van trips in. We bought a camper van last year and we hit 9 states and 11 national parks. So we'll do some more of that this year. We really love camping together. And, I'm also looking forward to my cousin Monica. She's getting married. So I don't have a big family, and she came along a lot later in life. So she's kind of like a little sister-ish, maybe almost like daughter-like figure to me. So that'll be great. And I'll get to see lots of family there as well. So a lot of family focus. And then, business-wise or career-wise, I'm just doing a ton of podcasts and a ton of speaking engagements. So I speak on how entrepreneurs can be better family men and show up and bring leadership in a smooth way that everyone loves, because a lot of times they try to bring it in a not so smooth way. They try to be the CEO and kick the door in and they're the dictator. But there's a way that us as entrepreneurs have a responsibility to bring leadership home. And so I do a lot of speaking now on the playbook, which is a collection of 7 exercises that teach leadership at home. And people can check that out at miraclemorning.com/PF playbook, parents and family playbook. So miraclemorning.com/PF playbook. There's 2 free exercises they can download. But if anybody's interested in having me speak to a small group, a big group, a company about the importance of putting family first, that's my big mission for this year and for the coming years, is to really get that message out there and try to make a difference in the world that way.
I love it, man. I'll make sure that we link to the Miracle Morning for Parents as well. And then I'll kind of rack my brain. We run in a lot of the same circles, so it might be some overlap, but I'll rack my brain a little bit on who we need to introduce you to so you can speak on that. Mike, I really appreciate you being on, man. Again, I know your time's super valuable. Thank you so much. And hopefully I'll see you in Austin later this year at one of the Front Row Dad events.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the opportunity. Really respect you, Scott, and what you do, not only in your industry, but the podcast that you've created. It brings so much value. So I'm honored to be a guest here. So thank you.
Thanks, man. See you soon.